You can deliver the most perfectly structured lesson with clear explanations, perfect pacing, great content coverage, but in the IB, it still won't be enough. And you know why? Because your job is not just to deliver content. Your job is something much bigger, much more complex, which is to develop your students' thinking. And I'm going to show you exactly what that means and the planning model that makes it possible. I am Dr. Carmen Millán, founder of Mestralia Education, and by the end of this video, you'll understand how IB planning differs from traditional planning and why that difference changes everything about your role in the classroom. So let's get into it. Let me start with something that might surprise you. When you move into IB teaching, your content doesn't change. Maths is maths, biology is biology, Spanish is Spanish. However, something changes, and what changes is not your subject content, is how you frame your subject content. And that single move from just delivering content to framing it is at the heart of what makes IB teaching different, because framing is only the beginning. In a traditional teaching setting, content is the destination. You select it, you sequence it, you deliver it, and then your students receive it, practice it, memorize it, and finally reproduce it in an exam. In the IB, however, content is not the destination. Content is the vehicle. The destination is something much deeper. Let me give you an example from my own subject, from Spanish. If you're a languages teacher and you're teaching a unit on migration, for instance, your content is clear. You will have to deliver vocabulary related to movement and displacement, text types such as personal testimonies or news reports, and also grammatical structures that are required for narrating experiences and expressing opinions. That content is relatively fixed. But in the IB, we're going to add a concept that is going to be framing this vocabulary and grammatical content. Concepts such as identity, belonging, displacement, voice. When we do this, when we frame our lexical and grammatical content inside these bigger ideas, these bigger concepts, it takes a language unit that could easily become a vocabulary and grammar exercise and transforms it into a conversation about what it means to leave everything you know, what it means to arrive somewhere new and to find your place in the world. They are live and present ideas, most likely ideas that your students are going through in their lives, regardless of whether or not they have crossed the border. And that's the difference between just covering content and creating meaning from it. So wait until you see what happens when you add the third layer. So we have content, we have concepts, but there's a third parallel layer. And if you miss this one, the depth you're aiming for will remain out of reach. It's the ATL skills, or approaches to learning. These are skills that your students need to engage meaningfully with your content and with the concepts. Thinking skills, communication skills, social skills, self-management skills, and research skills is what is required. And if you're coming from exam board courses, it is a big change. What is important for you to know is that these skills are not supposed to be taught separately. They are not just enrichment activities that you add at the end of your unit. They are planned alongside the content right from the very beginning. You can have the richest content and the most powerful concept, but if your students don't understand it, or they don't have the skills to think critically, or to communicate their ideas, or to manage their learning independently, the learning simply won't happen. So ATL skills are what makes the learning possible. Here's your simple framework. Before you plan your next unit, ask yourself 3 questions. First, what content am I teaching? And this is your expertise, it stays. 2, what concept gives this content its bigger purpose? What makes it relevant beyond my classroom? And 3, what are the skills that my students need to engage with this deeply, to succeed in their learning tasks. And that's it. One common mistake is when teachers plan content first, finish the unit, and then try to retrofit concepts and skills afterwards. It just doesn't work. Remember, content is the vehicle, not the destination. If you plan it in isolation, you've built a car with nowhere to go. Parallel planning from the start. That's the only way this works. And here's something that connects all of this. Every unit that you plan is an opportunity to help students think more critically, communicate more clearly, and manage their own learning more independently. This applies whether you're teaching Spanish, maths, sciences, or humanities, and across any of the IB programs. Once this framing becomes instinctive, your teaching changes, and not because your content has changed, but because the way you think about it has. Let's bring all of this together. 3 layers in parallel, that's the structure that makes IB planning work. And all of it comes down to one change in your first planning question. The question is no longer, what content do I need to cover? The question is, how do I frame this content so that it becomes meaningful, relevant, and challenging for my students? That's your action step this week. Take your next unit, ask the 3 questions together before you plan anything else. And honestly, once you experience what happens when students engage with framed content at this level, you won't want to go back. In the next video, we are looking at the subject guide as your most important planning tool. Your reflection question for this video: look at your most recent unit plan. Can you identify the concepts and the skills running parallel to your content, or is content still doing all the work? If you haven't downloaded the free New to IB Teaching Survival Checklist, the link is in the description. I'll see you in the next one.